Back in the summer of 2012, the Houston Rockets partook in one of the most lopsided transactions in NBA history. In this trade, they were able to obtain possibly the hardest piece to receive in any transaction, and that is a franchise player. James Harden, who at the time was a young two-guard who was coming off of the bench, was quickly able to change the perception on who he was as a player as he started to piece together some very impressive seasons. And because of this, the Rockets confidently started to build around him in hopes that it would one day lead into a championship. And to the credit of the front office down in Houston, they have been really close, but still have not been able to make the finals. And as time starts to pass us by with Harden entering his 30s, it's very obvious that the championship window is starting to close, which is why it should not have shocked so many people that the Rockets decided to trade Chris Paul in the offseason, as well as some picks to receive Russell Westbrook. But what did surprise quite a few people was a transaction that Daryl Morey pulled off in this year's trading deadline, and that was parting ways with their only quality center in Clint Capela, and in return, the Houston Rockets only received a 6'7" forward in Robert Covington. And even though, yes, in this transaction, there are a lot of concerns that have been raised by quite a few people, in my honest opinion, I believe that this transaction has made the Houston Rockets into a quality title contender, or possibly being eliminated in the first round. There's a lot of moving pieces to this NBA theory. What's up, YouTube? It's the one and only Legend of Winning, aka Low, and I'm back with another long-awaited NBA theories video. Quite honestly, I don't know why it's taking me so long to make another video in this series, but if you enjoy these type of videos, make sure you let me know in the comment section below and hit the subscribe button. Every number counts, and I'll start to make more videos like this if you say so. But I guess the biggest reason why it's been so long since I made a video like this is because I haven't had any controversial takes in quite some time. And to be completely honest, originally, I didn't even believe this take was that controversial until I started to see a lot of other people's takes and opinions on this Clint Capela trade. Because through the lens of analytics, trading Clint Capela and then receiving Robert Covington made a lot of sense, as the Houston Rockets yet again have doubled down, or I guess you can say triple down, on their core beliefs. You see what I did there? Triple down, 3-pointers. Was that a bad joke? Probably gonna write that out of the script. Anyway, on a more serious note, I sincerely believe that this transaction not only has made the Houston Rockets undeniably better, but it has given them a clear path to winning a championship. But before I go into that explanation and start marginalizing a lot of the concerns that many people have with this transaction, I guess it's only right to explain why it was necessary for the Rockets to trade Clint Capela and go out and get another floor spacer. To be completely honest, the Houston Rockets are just better without Capela, and there are several different metrics that echo this sentiment, but if we were to just look at the on and off numbers for Capela, the Houston Rockets offensive rating when he was on the floor was 110. However, when he was off the floor, it rose all the way to 116. Then when it comes to the defensive rating for the Houston Rockets, when Capela was on the floor, it was 107. But when he was off the floor, it went up to 109. Now, mind you, when it comes to defensive rating, the lower the number, the better. So yes, the Houston Rockets were a better defensive team when Capela was on the floor rather than off. However, the difference between the two is so marginal that it's easy to overlook, especially when you see the noticeable spike in offensive rating when Capela was off the floor. Now, I don't believe that these numbers are a great representation of who Capela is as a player, rather than how he was being utilized in Houston. For example, according to Synergy, back in 2017, the Rockets ranked 7th in plays finished using pick and rolls. That ranking decreased to 9th in the 2018 season, took a sharp decline to 23rd by the end of last year, and so far this season, the Rockets rank dead last when it comes to pick and roll usage. Now, this has very little to do with Clint Capela becoming worse at setting screens and rolling to the basket, more so than this has to do with James Harden adding to his arsenal and being able to create his own shot from behind the arc from isolation with his patent step back. So now, since Harden can create quality shots from deep, there really isn't any need for Capela to set screens, and normally he just stands close to the rim. Last year, this really wasn't that big of a deal, but this year it became extremely obvious with the addition of Westbrook that having two non-shooters on the floor at the same time just really wasn't going to help out this team on the offensive end. And with there being enough evidence that the Rockets became noticeably better offensively when Capela was off the floor, it only makes more sense for them to trade Capela and bring in a floor spacer like Robert Covington, who not only has the potential to match the level of efficiency from Capela when it comes to the points that he's scoring, but more importantly, since Westbrook is a volume scorer, his efficiency should skyrocket as well, since there's another floor spacer on the court with him. Which means that, theoretically speaking, an already lethal offensive Houston Rockets team should get better. Now, of course, a lot of you all have some concerns, so let's talk about it. First, let's talk about rebounding, because there seems to be a lot of people concerned about the Houston Rockets getting beat on the boards without Capela. However, there isn't any proof of this at all. When you look at the on and off rebounding numbers for Capela, at worst the Rockets miss out on 1 or 2 rebounds when Capela is off the floor. And again, I know that these are not the greatest representations of who Capela is as a player, but even if you look at the 11 games that Capela has missed while he's playing for the Rockets, Houston only got out rebounded 4 times and still averaged 45 boards, which is basically the exact same amount of rebounds that they averaged throughout the entire year. So again, no actual proof that they're going to miss out on any significant amount of rebounds once Capela isn't on the team anymore. And the reason why this occurs is for several reasons. For starters, the Houston Rockets are one of the more faster teams out there, so the opposing team doesn't really opt in to crash the offensive glass rather than just get back on defense so they don't give up any easy points on the fast break. The second thing to remember is, in this new era of basketball, there's way more three-point shots that are being attempted than there have been in previous decades, which also means that there's going to be longer rebounds, which means that even if there is a 7-footer on the floor and it looks like he's in great rebounding positioning, normally he isn't, because the ball just ricochets so hard off of the backboard or off of the rim that it bounces out of the grasp of the rebounding big man. And then finally, and what's most important, is that the Houston Rockets actually have a really good rebounding unit, especially with their perimeter players, with Russell Westbrook, James Harden, now Covington, and PJ Tucker all being really good rebounders for their size and position. So honestly, rebounding is not going to be that big of a deal at all. But if it does start to become problematic and they start to lose their footing in the rebounding race, who really cares? Over the past decade, it's been proven several times that you no longer have to be a great rebounding team to be considered a title contender. Another concern that has to be addressed is this theory that big men are just going to destroy PJ Tucker in a post. And honestly, that is one of the most ridiculous things I've heard of. Unless you are Anthony Davis, Jokic, Embiid, or Giannis, more than likely, your team is not going to run the offense through you just because there is a height advantage that you have over PJ Tucker or Robert Covington. I mean, seriously, do you all really believe that the Portland Trail Blazers are going to run their offense through Hassan Whiteside in a 7-game series rather than Damian Lillard? Yeah, no, that's more than likely not going to happen. Furthermore, some of the teams who actually do have a dominant post-up big man, such as Enes Kanter and the Boston Celtics, some of those players won't even see the light of day because how much of a negative they are on the defensive end of the floor, which is something that we just recently saw when the Houston Rockets and Boston Celtics matched up with one another. Now, going back to those 4 players that I highlighted earlier in Jokic, Embiid, Davis, and Giannis, what if I told you that even they won't have a massive impact in the post against the Houston Rockets? Yeah, no, I can't do that. I literally spent hours looking at how many points are generated in the post from these players, but then finally came to the conclusion that these numbers are basically pointless because more than likely their stats will be heavily inflated if they're being defended by 6'5" PJ Tucker. However, what if I told you that there was a way that the Houston Rockets could match, if not eclipse, the level of productivity from these players in the post? Follow me for a second. Let's just say, hypothetically speaking, the Houston Rockets are matching up with the Lakers, and Anthony Davis, on average during this series, is attempting 15 shots in the post, which is a lot. And with those 15 shots, he's converting them at a 55% rate, which is also pretty high. So 55% out of 15, that means that he's roughly making a little over 8 post-up shots on a game-to-game basis, which means that he's generating roughly around 16.5 points strictly off of post-up shots. So how can the Rockets match that productivity? 2 words: corner threes. See, the Houston Rockets, thanks to their high volume from behind the arc, should be able to match, if not eclipse, any high efficient shot that they potentially will be giving up to the opposing team while playing this small ball lineup. And when it comes to corner threes, on average, the Houston Rockets attempt roughly around 11 per game, shoot 38% from the corner, which means that they're making roughly 4 corner three-pointers a game, and that translates to roughly 12 points on a night-to-night basis just from the corner three. Now, you may be thinking to yourself, well, Anthony Davis still generated more points. However, be very mindful when it comes to Houston, these numbers predate the arrival of Robert Covington, who also shoots 38% from corner threes and has attempted quite a few of them within his first 4 games for the Rockets. And with the addition of Robert Covington, it's very realistic for the Houston Rockets to attempt 3 or 4 more corner threes, which means that the Houston Rockets can indeed match the productivity from these dominant big men just off of corner threes alone. Will you look at that? The Houston Rockets actually shoot better from the corner in the playoffs than they do during the regular season, which actually gives us a little bit more wiggle room on our Anthony Davis hypothetical. So will post-up players be a problem for the Houston Rockets? Only 4 of them, but theoretically speaking, they still should be able to match that productivity off of corner three-pointers alone. Which brings us to our final concern, and honestly, this is where my confidence wavers a bit. Oddly enough, no, I'm not that concerned about the Houston Rockets getting out-rebounded or Steven Adams putting up monstrous post-up numbers against the Rockets, but what I am concerned is the Rockets relying on both James Harden and Russell Westbrook during the playoffs. Historically speaking, both of these players struggle significantly when it comes to their efficiency as soon as the postseason begins, especially Westbrook, as his efficiency plummets to the low 40s when it comes to his effective field goal percentage. And even if we were to be a bit more optimistic about Russ, since it is a new system and he's never had this much floor spacing, it still concerns me about some of the shot selections and also some of his passes as well that could start piling up in the turnover category, which really could start to ruin the offensive rating for this team, which is something that they are heavily relying on. But I am willing to be a bit more optimistic on what we should expect from Russ entering this postseason. However, Harden is a completely different story because for the better part of his time in Houston, he has been around teammates who had the ability to space out the floor. And during the playoffs, throughout his time in Houston, he's been okay when it comes to his efficiency. But when you're on a team that lacks size and is heavily dependent on three-point shooting, you have to be efficient. So depending on Westbrook and Harden to lead this innovative team to a championship, to me is the biggest concern, and why I tend to waver from time to time on the legitimacy of this team winning a championship. And because of that, the reality is this team could legitimately get knocked out in the first round. A very disappointing outcome to a season that has a lot of upside, but something that is extremely realistic. However, just this one time, I am willing to be a bit more optimistic when it comes to both Harden and Westbrook just because of the circumstances. And because of the importance of the moment, I do believe that we will see some of the best basketball we've ever witnessed from Harden and Westbrook during the playoffs. And if that happens, as well as the role players shooting at a roughly average rate of three-pointers while shooting the highest volume that we've ever seen in NBA history, I go back to my original thoughts of saying, yes, the Houston Rockets have a very legitimate chance of winning a championship this year. But with all that being said, people, please let me know what you think about the video in the comment section below. This is just my theory, my NBA theory, if you will. And also hit the like button and subscribe if you feel like you enjoyed the video. And until next time, I will see you all later. Peace.